I would say that on most Sundays, I step into the pulpit and I preach the good news of Jesus Christ. I preach from the Gospels, from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You know, there is the Old Testament, which is the history of the people of Israel. And then there is the New Testament, which is the story of the beginnings of Christianity. And in the New Testament, there is the gospel. And then there are the epistles. And I preach from the gospel, usually because I am often moved by the life and times of Jesus Christ. How God looked down on God's people and manifested himself as a human being to walk among us, to live and breathe and die like one of us, to edify us, to show us the path to eternity, and to show us how to live our lives. So 90% of the time I preach from the gospel, and maybe one time out of 10 I'll preach from the Old Testament. But today, I want to talk to you about the epistles. And most of the epistles were written by Paul. And the epistle we read today was Philippians in the 4th chapter. And the reason why my heart, my mind, and my imagination was drawn to Philippians was the fact that Paul wrote these words while he was in prison. And I started thinking about all of you all. I started thinking about the fact that many of us are in a prison. Many of us in our lives are in prison. In a prison of our own creation. Paul was in a real prison with bars and locks and guards. But many of us are in a prison with no locks and no bars. But there is a prison guard. And we walk around with this prison guard with us. And that prison guard may speak to us in different ways. That prison guard may be in our ears or in our minds. And it says, look at your history. Look at what you've done. You can't do anything because of what you've done. Let's look at the pattern of all the things that have happened in your life to let you know that you are stuck right where you are and you better not move. But then some of us have prison guards that look into the future and say, oh no, that future is very scary. That future is horrible. You better stay where you are because you're stuck. I wonder if anybody here has had any prison guards in their minds and in their spirits. I wonder if anyone here has ever felt stuck, worried about the past, and fearful of the future. You feel stuck. That's why we need to talk about Paul. That's why we need to understand what this man was going through when he was in a physical, real prison. Now, Paul tells us all about himself. He's not humble about his standing as a upper crust, high-level Jew. He said, Paul was born a Benjaminite. Now, the tribe of Benjamin, they were the warriors. They were the enforcers. They had swagger. They had confidence. They were the might of Israel. But then he goes on to say, but I was a Pharisee. So not only was I strong and I'm tough, and I come from those type of people, but I was a Pharisee. That means I used to go down to the house church, to the synagogues, and I would read from the scroll of Isaiah, and I would read and sing the Psalms, and I knew it. I knew stuff word for word. I was one of the literate elites. I would debate the law. I would discuss the law. I lived the law. And I studied under the top rabbis. I'm no slouch. I studied under the top rabbis. Gamaliel. You see, Paul was in prison, but he had been the top of his people. I was so zealous, he says, that I went out and I persecuted the Christians because I thought they were abomination to the law. Then he goes on to tell us that he gave all of that up when he met Jesus Christ. He was born Saul in a place called Tarsus. And he was persecuting the Christians. When one day on the road to Damascus, he encountered Jesus Christ and his life was forever changed. We have the Old Testament. We have the Gospels. And then we have Paul, who comes after that. He wrote letter after letter after letter that makes up most of the New Testament. He was the evangelist that took Christianity from a Jewish sect and he spread it to the world, to the Gentiles. This is who Paul was. He was so zealous for Jesus and his communication of the good news to the Gentiles, to the non-Jews, that he took a non-Jew into the temple. Whoa. Paul, you may have gone too far at this point. Judaism is not over, the temple is still the temple. And they arrested him. And they put him in jail. And boy, if the Jews had got him, he'd be like, hey, I'm a Roman citizen, so you got to take me to Rome to hold me in Roman custody. And he started writing these letters. And what impressed me the most is how encouraging his letters were while he was in physical jail. He set up a church in Philippi, and he's writing them letters to encourage them while he is the one in jail. Wow. And I wonder how positive we are. How much hope do we share when we feel stuck? When we feel trapped? It's kind of hard for me when I got one of those negative prison guards in my ear talking to me about the past, or one of those negative prison guards in my ear talking to me about the future, to be positive about you. I'm so worried about myself, it's hard for me to be positive about you. What good news do I have to tell you if I'm worried about myself? But remember, he was a Pharisee who knew the good news of Jesus Christ. While he was in jail, I can imagine that he pulled open the scroll of Isaiah, that he remembered the songs that he used to sing, and that he was encouraged. And I ask you all, in this moment, to name some of the prison guards, to recognize some of the prison guards, some of those voices that are in your ear that's telling you that you are limited. I ask you in this moment to recognize some negative thought that comes to you from time to time. And it's okay to recognize it, because when you recognize it, it loses its power. Because if you don't recognize it, you think it's real. but it can hold you back from enjoying this moment, this beautiful day, and all these beautiful brothers and sisters here, and this beautiful music. It can hold you back because you're worried about what's going to happen, or you're worried about what happened. I invite you to name it. This is what I want you to know. That even though you may feel stuck, and even though you may feel limited, it is not real. You have the power. You have the choice. You have the ability to control your thoughts. You have the ability to control your mind. That's why I had to preach on the epistle today. Because I want you to know this, that you have the ability that no matter what prison you're in, and no matter what kind of negativity you are surrounded by, even externally or internally to yourself, that you have the power to release it. You have the power to let it go. That is the manifestation of the good news of Jesus Christ in your lives today. That you have the power to let go of any prison guard, any negativity, anything that's holding you back. Jesus gave us the key. I could see Paul in that prison. And I could see him reading the scroll of Isaiah. I could see him reading our scripture that we had this morning. I could see him hearing the words about that feast. That God has a feast for me with delicious meats and special wine. And I could see him closing his eyes and meditate on all the good things in his life. And then I could see him singing the 23rd Psalm. And I can hear him say, the Lord prepares a table before me in front of my enemies, in front of these people who are holding me back. And I can see, in the midst of him being in prison, him sharing this good news with his prison guards and waking up in their minds. Our gospel today, we hear about another feast in the form of a wedding banquet, don't we? And the king had this party for his son. And he invited the people to come to the party. And I wonder why they didn't come. I wonder what it was that stopped them from coming to the party. And I could imagine that they felt stuck. I can imagine there was something negative in their minds that's telling them that party's not good enough for you. Or you're too good for that party. Or why didn't you invite me to the last party? I'm not going to go. You know, it's that pettiness. That pettiness is one of those prison guards that enslaves us, that limits us, that holds us back. I think that's what Paul meditated on. Because he knew the word. And he knew the hope of Jesus Christ. And he got down with a piece of paper and a pen. And he wrote these words. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. This was a man in jail who then took a pen and said, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, put that in your minds. That's the good news of Jesus Christ, brothers and sisters. That's the good news right there. Whatever is beautiful, whatever is beautiful in your lives, You have the power to hold it in your minds and hold it in your thoughts. In the midst of being imprisoned, he was talking the good news. I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to do that. I'm going to ask you to hold those beautiful things in your mind all week. And when somebody comes to you with a problem of theirs, or some mess they're trying to throw upon you, I'm going to ask you to articulate that in any way that you want to. And tell them, hey, whatever is good, whatever is commendable, whatever is just, you hold that in your minds. That's the power of Jesus Christ, brothers and sisters. I want you to know this, that Jesus came to bind and to remove that prison guard. Jesus came so that you could fulfill your potential and share your potential to the world. My brothers and sisters, whatever is ailing you, let it go. No prison can hold you. No matter what's holding you back, let it go, because no prison can hold you. No matter what has you down and flat, let it go, because no prison can hold you.